for this event, which is entitled Libel Reform in the Public's Interest. I think it's a question, but at least it is going to be a debate. It is going to be chaired by Baroness Kennedy, who will shortly introduce the very varied and distinguished list of speakers. Baroness Kennedy is also a bencher of this inn. Now, the public's interest, of course, includes lawyers' interests, and I'm sure we will all have that firmly in mind. But law reform is a hugely important subject. We're sitting here in this wonderful Elizabethan hall that must have heard many debates on law reform. You can imagine all the topics that have been debated over the centuries. But this is a most important contemporary debate. We've read in the newspapers that the UK has become the libel centre, the venue of choice for those who wish to bring actions that probably wouldn't succeed elsewhere, and I'm sure that will be part of our debate. So may I welcome you all warmly to Gray's Inn Hall and hand over to our chairperson, Baroness Kennedy.
The purpose of this discussion is to consider the implications of the current proposals for libel reform for the general public. I'm happy to say that it's a subject that I'm very interested in, but largely because I'm one of the trustees of the Media Standards Trust, which has been very much involved in creating tonight's event. Over the past year, there has been considerable public and political discussion about libel reform. We've had the case of Simon Singh, which many of you will remember, but many cases have really focused the mind on the state of libel law here in Britain currently. It is concentrated on claims that libel law is too claimant-friendly, the reason for this libel tourism, as has been described. But there's also an issue of the unacceptable chilling effect, which publishers claim actually is operating, that people fearful of libel end up not writing about matters which should be in the public domain. There's been much less discussion about the positive and negative effects of reform in the interest of the general public. And now that the coalition government has committed to reforming the law and to introducing a draft bill, which we're expecting in March of this year, it makes sense to ask some questions about what the impact of reform might be. Now, I put my mind to the sort of topics we might reign over. We might want to roam over issues like standards in journalism. Is there indeed a chilling effect on publication and on things that are written about? Has it indeed had an impact on investigative journalism? What effect, if any, is reform of the law likely to have on news stories? What impact might it have or constraint on UK tabloids? And then there's the issue of fast and fair resolution. Will reform produce faster and fairer resolution of libel claims? And will reform lead to less libel claims, or indeed more? It's proposed that there should be a strengthened defence of responsible publication in the public interest. Is it right that a person should have no remedy in the court arising out of publication of damages alleging matters which are provably false, but where perhaps public interest matters may indeed have arisen in the first instance? Then there are questions of access to justice, because of course we are seeing the whole terrain of law funding change. Will libel reform, combined with changes to legal aid and caps on success fees, effectively kill off conditional fee agreements? And if so, will this limit access to the courts for those with little money? Should reform aim to provide affordable remedies? And we'll hear certainly something of that from our speakers. But the whole question of alternative dispute resolution. And then there's the question of small versus big, claimants and defendants. How should libel law distinguish between the defamatory claims against a blogger with perhaps only half a dozen readers and the defamatory claims against a newspaper with 2 million? Should the law limit or remove the ability of corporations to sue for libel? Remedies. Should a cap be placed on the level of libel damages? And should the courts be able to order the publications of corrections or apologies in all libel cases? And should the court be able to grant declarations of falsity in libel cases? And there are many more questions, and you're thinking them up, even as I was running through that little list. We have a very distinguished panel tonight, and I'm going to just briefly introduce them to you before inviting them to speak. We have with us Sir Charles Grey, sitting to my left. He reminded me that I, in fact, appeared before him in some scurrilous criminal case when he was sitting as a High Court judge. But he, as a practicing barrister, and indeed as a High Court judge, has handled a wide variety of civil cases, of defamation, of contract and tort, of confidence and privacy, employment and copyright. And he's represented some of the national newspapers, in fact most of them, and most of our broadcasters, many high-profile clients, including Sean Connery, Ian Botham, George Michael, and Hugh Grant, and oh, the stories he could tell if he was indiscreet. And then we have Dr. Evan Harris, a familiar face to many of you because you will have seen him often on Question Time and heard him speak. He's a former Member of Parliament, a Liberal Democrat science spokesman when in Parliament. He writes on science and on evidence-based policy and has campaigned actively for free speech, human rights, equality and libel reform. So that's Evan here to my right. Kevin Marsh is here. Kevin, can you wave an arm? Kevin, Executive Editor of the BBC College of Journalism, previously the editor of virtually every one of those flagship programmes, Today programme, The World at 1, PM, World This Weekend, and Broadcasting House. And then to Zoe Margolis, an award-winning writer, known for her blog, Girl with a One-Track Mind. And she was forced to issue legal proceedings against the Independent on Sunday, who seriously defamed her, and she was offered substantial damages, and she has her story to tell. And then finally, Razi Mireskandari, again, if I can have a wave, Razi, managing partner of Simons Muirhead Burton, where he heads the specialist media and commercial litigation departments, 25 years experience of dispute resolution on behalf of claimants and defendants, and has again acted in many high-profile media litigation cases in recent years. So I welcome my panel, and I'm going to ask Sir Charles Grey to open proceedings.